Hi everyone, welcome to the new episode of Nepalese Intake podcast. Today we have Ankur here with us. Very excited to hear about his experience transitioning into tech. Do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Sure. Hello and namaste to all of your listeners. My name is Ankur Pandit. I am a Nepalese Canadian professional working out of Toronto, Canada. I work in the technology industry. In particular, I work in AI and ML. So I work for a company called AltaML. In a nutshell, we're a developer of machine learning software. We work primarily with large organizations who want to use data-driven tools to do things like finding operational efficiencies, reducing risk, generating new sources of revenue. We really have two sides of our business. One side almost acts as an enterprise solution as a service arm, where we're working with organizations, primarily enterprise organizations and governments, to identify problems that can be solved by AI, ideate on the best use cases to tackle, understand feasibility, and take a use case all the way from ideation through to experimentation, all the way to deployment. For some of those use cases, we recognize that there's actually value beyond that initial use case, and there might be a actual product where it's a problem for more than just one enterprise organization, but for a larger swath of the industry. And for those, we have a different side of the business called our scale side of the business, and that's all focused on scaling out new ventures. So really, it's that almost enterprise consulting side type of the business and that scale side of the business. So I've been there for a couple of years, and currently I work there in business development.
Very interesting. You sound very passionate about it.
Yeah, no, it's super cool, and I kind of fell into this. Like I don't have, as you probably noticed on my LinkedIn, I don't really have a typical technical background. I actually came at it from a different angle, and so it's been a really interesting journey for me. It's been 2.5 years, and this is the third position that I've been at here.
Nice. So that is something that I wanted to talk about. You mentioned, right? हजुर चाहिँ अब पहिला बिजनेस ब्याकग्राउन्डमा भएर पछि इएमएलको ब्याकग्राउन्डमा चिन्नु भएको. So
Mm-hmm.
tell us about how that transition came about.
Yeah, for sure. So 2020मा म मार्केटिङ कम्पनीमा काम गर्न लाग्थेँ. कम्पनीको नाम चाहिँ क्रिटिकल मास हो. बेसिकली उनीहरूले के गर्थ्यो, जस्ट ब्रान्ड स्ट्राटेजी, एडभर्टाइजिङ, मार्केटिङ एनालिटिक्स त्यस्तो त्यस्तो काम गर्थेँ. अनि मार्च 2020मा म त्यो कम्पनीमा म कन्ट्र्याक्टर थिएँ के. And around that time, basically, they're like, hey, we like you, Ankur, but we can't keep contractors, right? So basically, what I did from there was I moved back in with my parents. I was trying to figure out what to do, and I reached out to an old professor to catch up. Just, let's have coffee, let's catch up. And he was like, hey, Ankur, I need research assistants. Do you want to be a research assistant for me? So I went to the University of Alberta. So I grew up in Alberta, Canada. And so my professor at the time, Vern Glazer, I was a research assistant for him. And him and his PhD students, one of his PhD students was researching the history of data science.
Okay.
And yeah. So they were doing some research about the communities of practice that were forming around software languages such as Python and R and what have you. And as I was doing that research, I was reading a lot about the requirement for folks who were strong communicators, good writers, folks with a humanities background, folks with a business background, to kind of supplement a lot of the data scientists that were coming in. So there were a lot of conversations on responsible AI, saying things like, okay, we have these tools that are being used and being built, these algorithms that are being used and being built by data scientists and machine learning developers and what have you. But do we have folks on the project management side? Do we have folks on the business analysis side? Do we have folks analyzing the ethical context of all this? So I was reading about that sort of literature, and I realized, okay, I want to be in this space. I want to position myself in this space. So when I first got at AltaML, I had a friend of mine who was working there, and he mentioned that they had an opening for a grant coordinator, right, to write grants and proposals. So I started off writing grants and proposals to the federal government, to different governments, to try to get us non-dilutive funding. So that's funding that's non-equity based, right? From there, basically, I was able to, build a good reputation in the company, and they said, hey, Ankur, like, where do you see your career going here? And I was like, I really love the company. I think we have a phenomenal culture. We're a fast growing company, fast growing team. But for me, I was very much thinking, hey, I kind of want to go more towards the delivery route. I want to go more towards how our projects actually get built. So I wanted to understand um, how to work with data scientists, how to work with clients, how to actually manage projects from what the early stages of, let's say, ideation or uh, feasibility, all the way through to experimentation, development, and eventually deployment, so that we have an AI solution that's embedded in one of our clients' environments and adding value. And so that's what I did for a year. So 2022, basically, I spent that year doing project delivery, which is a combination of what I would say three things: client relationship management, so managing the relationship with that client. Account It was team management, so you have a team of data scientists, software developers, uh, product owners who are kind of understanding the business context of the machine learning solution and managing that entire team. And then traditional project management, so your resources, your budget, and all that. And so for myself, that was just a fascinating interplay to understand. Okay, once the baton gets tossed to you, so once we sign a project, it's your responsibility now to help work with your team as well as the client's team to align on expectations, set out a scope of what you want to deliver, and then go deliver, right? So really good education in that. From there, basically, what ended up happening was I was moved to Toronto. So I was in Edmonton over in Alberta, moved to Toronto. And once I got over here, there was a huge opportunity, especially in this market, to help us grow. So ironically, Toronto is the biggest city in Canada. We're the largest economic market in Canada. But our company is headquartered out in Alberta. And most of our operations have been, thus far, had been very Alberta, the province driven. So there's this huge economic opportunity for us to capture here. And so I was lucky enough to kind of have those discussions with exec, and they were saying, "Hey, would you be open to a position in business development to start identifying net new clients and bring in net new clients into the company who might want to look at experimenting, working with us to, I don't know, find new AI solutions, or working with us to maybe supplement their teams because they have a huge backlog that they're not getting to." And so that's kind of how I got to there.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries.
So, kind of following up on that, I do have a question. So, what were the challenges that you faced when you were moving from more like business side of things to a tech side of things? Was there any knowledge gap, or how did you deal with those?
Yeah, there definitely was. So I think it's interesting. Like growing up in a Nepalese household, I was just kind of like, as you can likely know, it was very much like doctor banne ki, engineer banne ki. It was like, or lawyer banne. It was like pretty much that, or accountant.
Yes.
Saturday occupation
Yep.
ticket. And like for me, I knew from a pretty young age that I didn't fit into that archetype. I grew up like I was born in Nepal, but I was raised here, so I grew up very comfortable with. I was more of a writer. I was more into kind of like social studies. So I think I've gravitated more towards economics and business and subjects like this. And so for me, coming into a data science background, at first I was a little bit nervous because I didn't have, let's say, the formal machine learning training. But I think for me, what I had to do was a lot of self study. So I was taking Udemy courses to try to understand the different metrics, the different types of machine learning techniques that can be used, the relative business implications of those machine learning techniques. I think another thing that I did a lot of was just going out for coffees with my developers, and they were, to their credit, they were quite patient with me in explaining certain concepts. So it was a combination of self study, a combination of as I was writing these grants, through the process of writing the grants, I actually gained a decent amount of knowledge and how things were going. And then I think just a lot of exposure, right? I think my knowledge of machine learning and machine learning project life cycles increased dramatically as I was exposed to more projects, to the point where I would say in the last quarter that I was a project delivery manager, when I was talking to clients about, hey, like, here are some of the things that could prolong timelines, or here are some of the challenges that we may see at this phase. It was coming from a place of experience. And that was just from kind of being exposed to more projects and having more of those discussions. You start
Babati
picking
banda
things up.
garnu na.
So combination of the conversations with the
Babati banda
self-study
गरिहाल्नु त.
with the cases.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't think I can hear you.
No, it's okay. I was talking with someone else in the room.
Okay, cool. No worries. You're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. That was so. I think one of the key messages here is like टेकमा चाहिँ छिर्नको लागि टेक्निकल ब्याकग्राउन्डै हुनुपर्छ भन्ने चाहिँ छैन क्या. लाइक आई सी पिपल फ्रम
China.
बायोलोजी हुन्छ नि, अब बिजनेस त भइहाल्यो, मार्केटिङ भइहाल्यो होइन. सो आई थिङ्क द्याट इज समथिङ रियली कुल. वी हेभ
मैले के भन्छु स्टुडेन्टहरूलाई अनि न्यू एन्ट्रेन्सहरूलाई मैले के भन्छु, तिम्रो स्टोरी के हो,
Mm.
त्यो थाहा पाउन पर्छ.
Mm.
So for example, मैले 2021 मा एउटा साथीसँग गफ गर्न लाग्थेँ. ऊ पहिले बायोलोजी ब्याकग्राउन्ड थियो अनि त्यसपछि 2 year after डिग्री गर्न लागेको थियो. अनि मैले ऊ चाहिँ data analytics job, she was interested in data analytics job. So my son like, what was your experience? And she said things like, oh, मैले lab मा काम गरेको थिएँ, मैले philanthropic fundraising काम गरेको थिएँ. And I was like, right there, lab भनेको detail oriented. You are technical. You have analysis, experiment analysis skills. To philanthropic job चाहिँ, you learned how to negotiate with stakeholders. You know how to communicate. You learned how to raise money. And these are all skill sets that are transferable. So it's like maybe direct tech experience China, that if you have other things that are, let's say, for example, academic research background combined with, let's say, you worked for a nonprofit or you worked here, you can tell that story, okay? Because it's all about the skills you had and how you garnered them versus having the direct checkboxes. Because a lot of people don't have the direct checkboxes these days. It's very, how do I put this? It's very varied.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be an inspiration for a lot of our followers too. Like, even though if you are in tech or if you are not in tech, you can still transition to data analytics. And like the key skills that you need is actually of communicating than of technical skills. So that's a great message. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
So I do want to talk about your business related experience, right? I saw on LinkedIn that you participated in a lot of case competitions when you were in college. How did that help you in your career? Learning more about business and things like that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I would say is, when I think about my undergraduate degree, there's probably a handful of classes that were overtly, like, were highly meaningful, but for the most part, a lot of the classes have kind of just melted into the background. So apologies to my professors who, but there's a couple of professors who stood up, but it wasn't really the classes. What I think I really took away from it was, you know, the ability to manage one's schedule and manage one's life as an adult was huge. And the different extracurricular opportunities that I had while I was in school, be that, through clubs, be that through internships, so work experience, and then be that through, I would say, the case competitions I did. And so, in terms of case competitions, for maybe some of your listeners who don't really know what they are, the brief context I would give is you're given some sort of business case study. It could be, sometimes a couple of pages, sometimes up to, some of these were 15, 20 pages long. You're given a pre-allotted period of time, usually between 3 hours at the least to, I've been in some that were up to 24 hours, and what you have to do is then come up with a strategic presentation to a set of judges, some of whom are industry practitioners, some of whom are academics, and some of whom might actually belong to the company whom the case is about, and present your strategy as to what you think the company should do to move forward and what strategic decisions the company should make. And so I got to participate in, I think, a couple domestically in Canada and, in Toronto and Montreal, as well as some internationally in Hong Kong, in Sydney, Australia, in Auckland, New Zealand. And I think there's one more that I'm forgetting. But yeah, those are the major ones. And for me, I think the things that I learned from them were, number one, the ability to think on your feet. So oftentimes you're like asked by a judge a really difficult question, and you have to come up with, as I joke with my parents, some bakwas, like something to like, but like, all jokes aside, something to like actually, something of substance to provide to them that, can answer their questions. So really what you're thinking about is, how can you think of something, think of an answer to a question on your feet? I think the second thing it taught me was how to structure a story. So much of our lives, especially our corporate lives, are telling stories, right? So how do you tell a story in a way that has a clear line of sight, that has a clear, let's say, problem, solution, impact, that has clear line of thinking around how you came up with your solutions. And I think the final thing I would say is it just taught me how to keep cool under pressure, because those are really high pressure environments. I mean, I was competing with schools around the world. We all were competitive, type A type personalities. We all wanted to win. And so it really taught me, how do you work with a team and keep calm under pressure, right? So there's some skill sets that funny enough, I use every day now, right? Whether it's preparing a presentation, delivering a client pitch, or just being able to answer questions off my feet, I find a lot of the skills that I gained there are almost directly transferable to what I do day to day.
Very cool. So one of the reasons I was like, he did kiss competitions too. That's really cool. And right now he's working in AIML was because like when I was in college, I was a computer science and mathematics major, but I
Mm-hmm.
would go to business classes and I would be the only STEM person in those business classes. And I also participated in a couple of case competitions.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, there was an alignment in our journey. Like the difference was that you came from a business background and I came from a tech background. But I think that is a great message for people listening is that you don't really have to be just doing one things, and like
Mm-hmm.
if you really want to succeed in tech, you actually need skills from all kinds of fields, especially business, because if you are not generating value to the business, then you are of no use.
Exactly. And, and,
Mm-hmm.
and, and I, what I would say is that, like, I rely strongly also on having folks who have those technical competencies, right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
folks who are able to understand how to apply different machine learning techniques, folks who have deep technical experience is extremely valuable. What I found is, you know, um, the other skills of storytelling, being able to connect what you do to value. So working in our industry for so long, if you think about one of the biggest challenges in the industry is that use cases in AI are rarely operationalized, right? So I think I was reading a study from McKinsey that was talking about around approximately 35%, I believe. I might be getting the number off a bit, but 35% of use cases that are worked on are operationalized. And that's a pretty paltry number if you think about it. That basically means that two-thirds of all the investment that goes into AI doesn't actually realize value, right? And so at AltaML, the firm that I work for, one of the things that we've really tried to focus on is incorporating things like connection to value. So what is the ROI or the potential impact? Understanding the workflow, so thinking about design thinking principles of how a machine learning solution will fit into a particular workflow. And so we create flow charts to kind of describe that. We create user journeys and personas to describe what a user's journey would look like before the solution and after the solution. And we also think a lot about incorporating folks like product owners who are understanding the business value, the business impact, the product pain points, and doing things like customer discovery so that we understand if this is a pain point that's worth solving for, as well as bringing in folks like folks in software to come in and talk about how do we embed it, right? And so all this is to say that in a technical context, especially in what we do, but really in a lot of different teams, you need a multifaceted team to succeed, right? You need the folks who have the deep technical experience. You need folks who can help out with some of the product thinking about, okay, what features should we work on and why. You need folks with some of that software experience. You need folks who have some of that business context, whether that be in sales or marketing or project management, right? And so what I would encourage listeners who are interested about going into tech about doing is understanding that there's not just one path, right? And that even if you're, let's say, someone who is more technical and wants to gain more business skill, that's totally fine. Let's say you're someone who has a business background but wants to learn a little bit more about tech and maybe wants to pick up coding or maybe wants to learn more about the business side of tech. That's fine as well, right? There's different pathways to this,
Yeah,
and I'd be open to those different pathways.
yeah, 100%. I'm gonna look up. I have more questions for you on my phone, so I'm gonna pull it up real quick.
Yeah, yeah, no worries.
So I want to talk more about our heritage, being a Nepali.
Yeah, of course.
So how was that transition for you initially when you moved to Canada? Like you said you were young, right? So tell us more about that. Have you like found a tech community in Canada too?
Yeah, so I was quite young. Like I think I was 2.5 when we left,
Mm-hmm.
and moved to the United States, and then almost 6 years old when we moved to Canada,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my challenges are different than I think first generations immigrants are. So I've talked to folks who are For sure. My parents would be considered, in my opinion, first generation because they moved. I wasn't born here, but I was pretty much raised here.
Yeah.
And so my challenges have been less about, I guess, navigating Canada as a newcomer and more about understanding and blending my external world with my internal world. And so what I mean by that is I grew up in Canada, but I'm in a household चाहिँ नेपाली थियो. So घरमा बसेको बेलामा म नेपाली बोल्नु पर्थ्यो. मेरो like मामाजू or मामाजूसँग गफ गर्ने बेलामा or cousinहरूसँग गफ गर्ने बेलामा नेपालीमा बोल्नु पर्थ्यो. अनि त्यसपछि स्कुलमा you have to talk in English, and it's just like balancing, whether it's balancing the culture, balancing the friend groups, balancing the languages. That was probably more of my issue growing up. Not issue, but more my story, where it was like having some sort of a connection to the Nepalese language, Nepalese food, the Nepalese holidays, culture, while also kind of growing up here in a very Canadian context, right? And so, for example, like when it comes to things around work, because I almost rarely talk in work mode in Nepali because I'm always with my parents, it's a lot easier for me to do it in English, right? But about, I guess, things related to the home, that's usually what I talk about with my parents or my family. It's easier for me to do it in Nepali. So
Very cool, very cool. Most of our guests have been the ones who moved to the US or like Canada after they were older, like around 18 or 19. So you were the
yeah,
first one who we had who moved out of the country at such a young age.
yeah. खास भन्ने हो भने मलाई म यो इन्टरभ्यू भन्दा अगाडि मेरो fear चाहिँ it wasn't to talk about my career because त्यो चाहिँ मलाई एकदम सजिलो लाग्छ. मेरो fear चाहिँ bilingual interview कहिले पनि गरेको छैन के मैले.
Oh.
So so कहिलेकाहीँ like मैले यो कल भन्दा अगाडि म मामुवालाई फोन गरेको थिएँ अनि मैले भन्न लाग्थेँ मैले इन्टरभ्यूमा नेपालीमा बोल्नु पर्छ कि अलिकति डर लागेको छ. ठिकै छ, it's fine, it's practice.
No,
Practice,
you're coming out as very good at it.
Oh, thank you.
You're very
Okay,
good at
good.
it. So, trying to think of more questions. Usually, I'm the only host. So, like, I did not have a lot of time to tell people that you were coming, so did not get a lot of questions. But let's see what I have here.
What about yourself? You said I was looking at your LinkedIn, you're in the Ohio area, is that right?
Yeah, I'm in the Ohio area. I moved to the US in 2017 when I was like 18 years old.
Nice.
I moved here for my undergraduate studies on it. त्यसपछि bachelor's in math and computer science सके. त्यसपछि worked at Ernst and Young for a year in their legal services. अनि त्यसपछि right now I work for an electric company as a data analyst. अनि I started Nepalese in Tech. हाम्रो एउटा Discord community छ of around like 400 members. अनि I started that around last summer. Because I realized that coming out of college I was really lonely because it was hard to make friends. Now I have like around 450 friends on Discord, so which is really cool.
Amazing. अनि मैले त्यो Slack community पनि हेरेको थिएँ. त्यो Slack community एकदम interesting लाग्यो मलाई. त्यो Slack channel side, the greater Nepalese diaspora.
Oh yeah,
Nepali diaspora.
that's a different one. Preeti didile गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ the greater diaspora चाहिँ Nepali diaspora चाहिँ. We kind of started at the same time, but we are more focused on tech. And the good thing is we have people from all around the world, like Canada, yeah, France, Spain, अनि त्यसपछि US भइहाल्यो, नेपाल, India, सबै ठाउँबाट हुनुहुन्छ.
Yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah, which is really cool. We're coming together. And I don't know if we will be able to create something together, but एक दुईवटा ideas pop up भएको छ हैन, यो गर्न सकिन्छ त्यो गर्न सकिन्छ भनेर. But like it's hard finding time with people to get that done, but still it is an interesting community. So if you ever have any opportunities tech related हजुरको टिममा वा बाहिरबाट, you can send it to me and I can send it to the Discord channel too.
Yeah, 100%. And where's majority of, you said across the world, are majority of the people in the United States, or?
I would say United States. I'll have to check. It is either United States or either Nepal.
Yeah. So what I'd say is, we are actually primarily in Canada, but we have a Houston office and we're looking to grow our United States presence. So if anyone is curious, I'd recommend go to AltaML.com, take a look at it in any open roles, anything piques your interest. What I can do is I'm happy to try to connect, like try to, answer any questions about anything. And if you're curious about anything, I'm happy to offer that. We're trying to grow our presence in the United States as well. So for any of your listeners who might be curious about AltaML, happy to help out there, or just really curious about their careers in tech. So happy to answer any questions or share my experience, and would love to meet more people from the community as well. So we'll be open to
Awesome.
that.
Awesome. So now that we have talked about like a general overview of what you do and your background and things like that, I want to talk more about tech, right?
So
What is it that you actually do at AltaML? What is the
yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
work? How are you using AI and machine learning to create business
Yeah.
value?
So great question. So I'll answer it first with what we do as a company, and then I'll get into what I do day to day. So the way I would describe it is we still have those two sides of the business, invent and scale, right? So in invent, we work with organizations to identify AI use cases that might be of value, and take them through that entire AI lifecycle. Some examples that I can give you: we've worked with governments to create for time series forecasting models. So models that can forecast into the future around the probability of wildfires occurring, or the areas at which wildfires occur, to kind of help pre-direct resources to help with wildfire pre-suppression. There's a really cool project, you can look it up online. It's called Smart Whales, where essentially what we were doing was we were working with a variety of different partners, the Canadian Space Agency, Hatfield Consulting, which is a local consultancy, and this was funded by the federal, a department of the federal government. And what we did was we used computer vision technology to identify the presence of North Atlantic right whales in satellite imagery. So North Atlantic right whales, context for your listeners, are a highly endangered species. And so we use satellite imagery to identify the presence of North Atlantic right whales. And our hope is that we can use this model when it's fully deployed to then inform ships of the North Atlantic right whale's location and kind of general movement patterns, so that they can avoid collisions and entanglement with fishing gear, as those are the two leading causes of death of the species, right? So those are two examples I can speak to. I think one other example, we worked with another computer vision example. We worked with a oil and gas company that had a whole bunch of, in their factories, they had a whole bunch of fireproofing, which is a type of material that you put in factories to prevent fires. And that fireproofing often would, I guess, it would break down. And they needed a more efficient and effective mechanism to identify where fireproofing was breaking down in a facility, because right now they're doing a lot of physical inspections. It just wasn't a very efficient process. It was a very costly process. So we worked together to identify areas were at highest likelihood of fireproofing breakage risk using computer vision, and flag that all over their plant sites. And that has now allowed them to focus their inspections on those areas, right? And so there's even like a UX UI that exists that can kind of clearly tell what that is. I mean, those are just some examples. I think one other one I can give you is, we worked in, if you think about natural language processing, right now NLP is so popular in the world because of the proliferation of LLMs around things like ChatGPT-3 or Bing. And when you think about it, a lot of that underlying technology in NLP can be used for a whole different variety of mechanisms. One use case that I can talk about on the consulting side was we worked with a company who had over a decade of material master data, right? And what we did was, if you think about it, material master is kind of it's a type of purchasing mechanism that companies have. And on that material master, there's a whole bunch of free text data that wasn't really clearly organized. And so it was difficult for that company to understand what exactly did they purchase over the past decade or so, right? And so we did, an initial proof of concept that was focused on, okay, how do we extract clear categories, or extract entities of interest, and create clear categories to help decision makers understand what purchases were made. And so that was an interesting one on the NLP side, I guess, for a couple of different examples. And the last thing I'll say is, when we think about the venture side of our business, really what it is it's taking a look at a problem that's pervasive beyond one company, but as a problem for a broader industry, and creating some sort of a machine learning solution or a set of solutions that speak to that. So an example I can give you, and is it's a company called, it's a venture of ours called Jurisage AI. It's all about using the large language models that are kind of not the specific ones, but that same type of LLM type technology that's being used, across the world right now, and focusing on the field of case law research, right? So that company is focused on creating AI tools to improve the speed and ability at which lawyers can conduct case law research. And so they have a whole bunch of different tools that almost act like browser extensions to dramatically improve the speed at which you can do case law research, find relevant case insights. It's quite fascinating what they're doing there.
Very cool. When I talk with you, I feel like I'm talking with someone who has spent like 2 decades in technology and machine learning.
I guess you when you're around the fields as much as I am, you
Mm-hmm.
kind of you pick up a lot. And so one thing I will say, I think I didn't answer the second part of your question, which is what I specifically do there.
Yeah,
And so what I specifically do in business development is really we try to identify organizations, be that governments or companies, who we think might be a good fit to work for. And so my job is to identify them, reach out to them, and work with our teams to see if there's value that can be gained, to see if they have challenges that may be addressed through machine learning. It could be a particular use case. It could be that they just have a ton of data and they want to find a way to turn it into actionable insights. It could be they have some experience in AI ML, but not seeing a return on their budget. It could be they have an under-resourced internal data science team and they need some support to help deliver on use cases. There's a whole wide variety of problems these companies could have. My job is to basically identify these companies, work with organizations to see if we can find a way to work together. And once that deal is signed and we start, working in a commercial arrangement, we have a delivery team that takes over from there. And so my job is to basically find new prospects and work with them to become customers.
very cool. Thank you for sharing that. It's very interesting, and I'm also kind of new in the field. I have been in the data analytics field for 2 years, doing a little bit of machine learning too. So it's really valuable for me to learn about your experience and see where I can be in a few years.
Yeah, no, 100%,
Mm-hmm.
100%. And I think you're doing all the right things, right? Like with the fact that you've already been at EY and you're doing this new job here, so that's awesome.
Oh,
And
thank you.
data analytics is direct. If you think about a lot of that machine learning stuff, that first step is kind of data analytics, right? That's what we
Mm-hmm.
build on top of,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that's awesome that you're doing that already.
yeah. Thank you. So, a little more personal question again. What is next for Ankur Pandit? Are you gonna start your own consulting firm, or and hire us, or what is next for you? What is your career plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard for me to answer because 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I would never have been able to tell you I was working in AI.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was going to continue working in digital marketing. Then a global pandemic happened, priorities changed. I landed this job and I got into the AI world. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
extremely grateful for that. Like, I think when I think about things that I'm grateful for, one of the biggest things that I am grateful for is landing in the AI world when I did, given the growth in the field and just the amount of opportunities in the field. So really, I'm still figuring that out, along with maybe all your listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I'm really just focused on helping to grow AltaML. We have a phenomenal opportunity here as an organization. We're, I think, the 13th or 14th fastest growing company in Canada,
Oh
right?
wow.
And we have a phenomenal opportunity here to grow in Canada, to grow in the United States, and beyond that. And I'm happy to be a part of that. I think we have a great team, and I'm enjoying that. Beyond that, I'm not sure. Well, I think we'll figure it out, day by day, and just see where my passions and my skills take me. But as of right now, I'm kind of just enjoying the ride.
Very cool. Well, good luck and anything that you are gonna try in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else that you guys are curious about?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I do have one more question before I let you go. So, Agnesi, when we talked about transitioning into tech, you said
Mm-hmm.
like businessबाट नि इन्टर गर्न मिल्छ बायोलोजीबाट इन्टर गर्न मिल्छ हुन्छ नि you can come from different you can come with different skill sets. So one of the things about our community is that a lot of us are beginners.
Mm-hmm.
And since you being on like you yourself are on a leadership level at your company, right? You have hold that position for almost 2 years. What are the tips that you have for newcomers in technology, except for like believing in your skills? Or
Hmm.
how do you think they can be as successful as you?
Well, I don't know if I'm that successful. I think
You
that's
are
that's a
successful. You just said you're working for like one of the fastest growing companies in Canada.
yeah. I think I got lucky at the right place at the right time. But I'll take it. I'll take it. I need you to write my LinkedIn bio from here. But no, jokes aside, what I would say is a couple of different things. One would be finding mentors and folks who have done what you did or what you want to do and learning about what paths they took. Maybe they took particular courses, maybe they took particular programs. So, at AltaML, for example, one of the things that we offer in Calgary, in the city of Calgary, as well as we also have one with the government of Alberta, are these talent accelerators, which are basically opportunities for, we have partner organizations that we work with. I'll use the one at the city of Calgary, for example. It's called the Applied AI Lab. We have four partners: Suncor, TransAlta, Spartan Controls, and ATB Financial. Your listeners might not know them, but they're quite large enterprise type corporations in Alberta, which is a province in Canada. And what we've done there is we've created a program where mid-career, kind of everyone from fresh grads to mid-career professionals go there to receive targeted almost training in machine learning techniques. So there's an expectation that there's a level of technical competencies to start, but they receive targeted techniques and training in how to apply that in an applied machine learning context. And we help them work on use cases. They're paired with a tech lead. They're paired with other staff members who help them work on use cases for these companies. And so I'm bringing this up in our context, but the reason I bring it up is I would try to find as many ways to get practical experience as possible. Maybe that's internships. Maybe that's I know that in the data science community, there is ways to work on practical case studies. So if you can work on case studies, that's also valuable. So mentorships, I think, is really valuable. So finding the right mentors is valuable. And then I think the third thing is being flexible to jobs that might not necessarily be what you eventually want to do, but you'll get a skill. And I'll share my example of, when I got a job as, in grants, I wasn't sure if I wanted to write grants forever. Like, I wasn't thinking like that. I was just thinking, look, this is a great way for me to uh, kind of get my foot into this company, learn a lot of great skills, improve as a writer, improve my ability to just reason and have put together really cogent arguments. And so that's what really drew me to that position. And it ended up being, actually, despite me going to another position, it ended up being such a great opportunity and such a great experience for me. And I learned so much, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'd say, just to kind of close, is find mentors who've done what you want to do, reach out to them, be pesky if you need to be, and kind of build those relationships. Try to get as much practical experience as possible. That might be just doing data science case studies online. That might be trying to join some sort of applied AI kind of thing, or it might be, you might not want to get into data science. Just some sort of internship experience or a career experience is always valuable. And then the last thing I'd say is, like, be open to positions that are a little bit different from what you eventually want to do, because everything that you do is a stepping stone, right? Everything that you do, you're gaining skills and you're gaining competencies that can help you tell your, I guess, professional story.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's definitely going to be valuable to a lot of our listeners. So I have one final question to you, and this is my favorite question. So if any of our viewers have any questions or would love to be mentored by you, is it okay for them to reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So I'll give you my LinkedIn. They're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think that's probably the easiest way to reach me. So I check my LinkedIn quite often. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to kind of provide any of my insights or any of my experiences or help out in any way possible.
Awesome. It was great having you. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you go early.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, thank
All
you
right,
so much for everything. We're gonna upload the podcast on our YouTube channel, and
cool.
we will see,
Is
share.
um is the recording done here, or are you still have the recording?
I still have the recording going on.
Okay, cool. I just had a couple questions after. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, I can stop the recording.
Awesome.